All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good Erev Shabbos. Hope you're doing well so far today. We're going to do a Rashi from the end of the Parsha, not from the sixth Aliyah, actually, but from the seventh Aliyah. Interesting couple of Rashis, actually. Hold on a second. Make sure I get it up here. Here we go. Okay. In the beginning of the seventh Aliyah, we take a transition out of the Parshas Hamoadim, the section of the Torah we've been studying over the last couple of days having to do with the Jewish holidays. The Torah teaches about two specific mitzvos, the lighting of the menorah and the placing of the bread on the shulchan, the showbreads on the shulchan. Very interesting why these two mitzvos are appended to the Parshas Hamoadim, why they appear now in the order of the Torah. I wrote a little bit about it in my written Dvar Torah, which you probably got earlier this morning. But I want to show you a few specific Rashis. Firstly, as the Parsha opens, Tavis b'nei Yisrael v'kchoilecha shem and zayitach kasis lamaor lahalos ner tamid, talking about the lighting of the menorah. Rashi comments on why this is being said here, even though in Parshas Tetzava we already have a similar command. He says, Zo parshas mitzvos haneros, uparshas vatat tetzaveh lo nemra ela al seder melechas hamishkan lefarish tzorach hamishkan. Over there in Parshas Tetzaveh, when the mitzvah of lighting the menorah is mentioned, it's really mentioned as part of the order of the structure of the building, the construction of the Mishkan. So as part of that order, Seder Melechas HaMishkan, it's stated over there. However, V'chein mashma v'ata sofa l'tzavis b'nei Yisrael akach. The simple implication of the pasuk over there in V'ata Titzaveh is V'ata Titzaveh, that this is sort of a pin that we're putting in this topic. Say I'm mentioning the menorah now because it's part of Melechas HaMishkan, but put a pin in it because I'm going to be commanding you about this later on. When does that command come? It comes now over here in Parshas Emor, as we're learning about the services that happen in Vayikra, all the various korbanos, all the things that happen in the Mishkan. So now we're learning about how to use that menorah, which was already mentioned back in the Seder Melechas HaMishkan over in Parshas Tetzaveh. That's one of the answers. That's the answer that Rashi takes over here. Of course, it's lahalos ner tamid. The candles are lit all the time. Tamid. We've discussed this many, many times before during the parshios of Melechas HaMishkan. What exactly is the meaning of tamid? Tamid here, as Rashi points out, is milayla l'layla, k'ma olas tamid, she'ena ela miyom el yom. It's not constant, but consistent. There's two meanings to tamid, constant and consistent. Over here, they're not lighting the menorah every second of the day. They're lighting it once a day, and then it lasts. But it's that it's lit every single day, making it tamid. It's something that's constant, as that's consistent, not necessarily constant. That's always something you have to analyze when you get to the word tamid. But the particular Rashi that I wanted to get to today is about the placement of the menorah. The placement of the menorah, the Torah tells us, is michutz leparoches ha'edus. It's right outside the paroches, the curtain of testimony. So Rashi is very interesting over here, tries to figure out why this is called paroches ha'edus. Rashi says, I'm just going to paraphrase before I get to it, Rashi basically says that the paroches itself, the curtain that separated between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim, outside of which the menorah was placed, didn't itself have any particular sanctity and didn't itself give any particular edus. It's not called the paroches ha'edus, the curtain of testimony, because it itself is giving testimony, but rather it's being called the paroches of testimony because it's separating between different areas of vessels that themselves give testimony, right? So if you would say, go out into the lobby, you'll see the door of the sanctuary, right? Is the door of the holy sanctuary. Is the door holy? No. It's holy because it's the door of the sanctuary, okay? So over here too, the paroches maybe doesn't give any testimony, but if it's guarding one of the vessels, it's shielding one of the vessels that gives testimony, it becomes known as the paroches ha'edus, the paroches of, parentheses, the vessel that gives eidos. That's how you would read this pasuk. The only question is, which vessel is giving eidos? So if you take a look here at the sketch, I want to try to bring up this image of the Mishkan. Let's see. Do you see that? Do you see what I just brought up?
I don't see it.
No? Okay. Let's try this. There we go. Now you see it? Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so this is a sketch of the structure of the Mishkan. So you see here's Pesach HaChatzer. This is the opening of the Chatzer. Then the first part of the Chatzer here, you have the big Mizbeach, which has the big ramp coming up to it. And then you have the opening of what we call the Mishkan, which is the area of the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim. So inside the area of the Kodesh over here, this first area of the Mishkan, you have the Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden Mizbeach, which is the Mizbeach of the Ketores, as opposed to the Korbanos, which were offered out here. So you have the Mizbeach HaZahav, and then on the left here, you have the Menorah, and on the right, you have the Shulchan. Shulchan was in the north, Menorah was in the south. We read about this when we talked a little bit about the structure and the construction of the Mishkan. Then you have this separation. This is the Paroches HaEdus. This is the Paroches, the curtain that went into the Kodesh HaKodashim over here, which contained the Aron. Now inside the Aron, you had the Luchos, which are sometimes called in the Torah Luchos Habris, the tablets of the covenant. These were given to us at Har Sinai, the 10 Commandments, we call them. But sometimes they're called Luchos HaEdus, the covenant, the tablets of testimony. So Rashi here debates, I'm going to read it in a second, whether this paroches is called the paroches of the Eidos because it's sort of shielding or guarding or separating out the Aron, which had Luchos HaEdus inside of them, or because it's guarding and shielding the Menorah, which has a light that gives testimony to the fact that God is dwelling amongst the Jewish people. We're going to read the Rashi now, but I just wanted you to see it in the structure. It's that this paroches is called Eidos, not because it gives Eidos, but because it's connected to either this vessel or this vessel, which themselves give Eidos. So let's read that in the Rashi right now. Back to Rashi. Paroches HaEidos. Why is it HaEidos? Shelifnei ha'aron hu karo eidos, because it's in front of the aron, which itself is called eidos. It's called testimony, because inside of it, it has the luchos ha'eidos. However, here's a second interpretation. Rabbeinu darshuhu al ner ma'aravi shehu eidos l'chol ba'olam she'ashchina shora b'Yisrael shenosen ba'shemen kemidas chavruseha u'mimena hayamaschil uba mesayem. Maybe it's being called Parochos HaEdus because of the menorah, which has the Ner Ma'aravi. It's the westernmost candle of the menorah, which is considered special. It stayed lit longer. It started with that. It ended with that. It lasted longer than the rest of the candles, the rest of the oil flasks on the menorah, which is why we try to symbolize that in the shul by having our own Ner Tamid. This is called the Ner Ma'aravi, the Western candle. And Chazal tell us the fact that that was lit all the time. It always remained lit, even after the other candles extinguished. And it was from that one that we start to light the next day's menorah lighting. The fact that it was lit all the time represents the fact that God dwells amongst the Jewish people. It represents the Hashras, Hashchina, B'Yisrael. Light always represents neshama, represents Hashem. So the fact that this stayed lit all the time, it was like that beacon, that light. It says, oh yeah, God is still here. God is still in this place. The miracles are still happening. And so the paroches is either called ha'edos because of the aron, which is aron ha'edos, luchos ha'edos, or because of the menorah, whose ner ma'aravi is edos hashchina shor b'Yisrael. It's just an interesting, I thought it was a very interesting Rashi, both because it tells us why certain things, vessels, items are called with an adjective that has nothing to do with them per se, but also because it tells us about two of the vessels which were integral to the Mishkan in giving testimony about its ultimate purpose, which is the fact that God dwells amongst the Jewish people. That's the whole purpose. We read back in Parshas Truma, the whole idea is that God should dwell amongst us, and these vessels are ones that gave testimony to that fact. Have a great Shabbos, everyone. We will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.